Okay, so this second segment, the philosophical question, is a lot more involved. There are multiple pieces to this, and as it says in the template, there's no one right answer. I'm just looking for you to give this a lot of thought and put down what you think. So the first question is, is the body the enemy of the soul? Is life a prolonged battle between good and evil impulses? The handout that you have hopefully read by now, and if not, take a minute, pause this, and go read it, that Composition of Man handout that I gave you in class, that presents the view that Robert Louis Stevenson would have been raised with in his strict Protestantism. So that delineates the person as a trichotomy, a three-part being with body, soul, and spirit. And the idea is the body is the senses, the world consciousness. The soul is really the self-consciousness. And then the spirit is the God consciousness. And so the view would be that man, even apart from a God consciousness, has a conscience within himself that lets him know what's right, what's wrong, just by instinct. But, and as human beings, being social beings, there are certain things that people, even with no faith or concept of God, will still generally accept are good or bad. But the third piece being the spirit or the God consciousness that would cause someone's conscience to be kind of programmed and informed by their faith. So it would be sort of a Ten Commandments kind of a sense of right and wrong and things like that. So consider, what do you think about that? What is a person? Is a person a trichotomy, body, soul, and spirit, or is a person a dichotomy, just a body and a soul? And if so, what resides where? Like, do evil impulses really come from our physical bodies, or are our bodies just that, just meat, with no real thoughts or wills of their own? And the soul, then, would that be the mind, the personality, the mind, the will, the emotions, all of those things? It gets a little complicated because we know so much now through neuroscience that the brain is not purely physical. Thoughts and ideas are stored neurologically within and chemically within our brains. Our emotions are stored chemically within our brains. And so there is actually a material, physical component to our emotions and our memories, for example. So it gets kind of muddy. So just, you don't have to unravel the world of neuroscience here, but what do you think? What is the role of the body? What is the visible versus the invisible part of a person? And where do the urges to do things come from? Are they physical desires? Are they psychological desires? Are they emotional? Are they instincts? And you can also kind of bring in here, even though this isn't the psychoanalysis part, you can bring in the terminology that we talked about briefly about Freud. For example, is the body the id? Is the soul the ego? Is the spirit the superego? Does that fit? Can we interchange those terms, or are those different things? Let's see. So then just think about the concept of good and evil being at war within a person, and think about yourself as you're doing this exercise. Where did you get your definitions of right and wrong, good and evil? Do you feel the tension, the struggle between the things that you should do and the things that you want to do? Are those not always the same? Are they at war within you? Can you relate to that idea of a war in the members, like Stevenson mentioned? So just as an example, for myself, of course, I've mentioned in class that I was raised in a very strict religious context, and evil to us, for me growing up, evil was pretty much anything that was of yourself, anything that was selfish, self-centered, self-serving. Those things were always assumed to be totally corrupt. And so how does that play out? You grow up believing you need to always give in to others. You kind of let people take advantage of you, walk all over you because you don't want to be selfish. You tend to develop a crippling inability to assert yourself, because again, being selfish is like the ultimate sin. And you grow up that way, you sort of lose touch with your own identity as an individual. Everything about you is placed in the context of roles, being a good son or daughter, a good husband or wife, a good mother or father, a good whatever. And so you don't trust yourself. You learn to mistrust anything that comes from within yourself, because the self is totally depraved, in the words of Calvinism that we discussed in class. And then if you do anything for yourself to take care of yourself or go after something that you want, you've got this kind of low-grade guilt that kind of haunts you day and night, because now you've been selfish. So it's something that I can relate to personally. I've seen it play out in other people many, 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 many times. So some other things to consider: where does the battle come from? If the battle that Robert Louis Stevenson discussed is a result of competing desires, then is it the existence of the rule that creates the desire to break it? That was sort of the philosophy that he had embraced when he left his parents' home and faith and all of that context in order to join that radical bohemian group. That was a very a group that was outside the system, that by its very definition did not have rules for behavior. And that was freeing for a while, but it's not sustainable. So there have to be some moral, ethical, even social boundaries around our behavior. You could say, well, if there's no such thing as a law, there's no such thing as a crime, because a crime is a legal infraction. But if there's no such thing as a law, that doesn't mean there's no such thing as violence, as theft, as things harming others, things like that. It just means there's no accountability or definition for those things apart from a law. So think that through a little bit. What are the parts of the human being? Do you agree with Stevenson that those parts are kind of by nature at war with each other, and that there's this conflict between good and evil within ourselves? And if so, where does that come from, and what can we be expected to do about it? So those are some things to think about in the philosophical question portion. And again, these are meant to be your own thoughts. Support them with reasons for why you think them, but you don't have to prove them. There's no right or wrong answer here. People have been debating this for as long as there have been people. So we're not trying to solve it. We're just trying to think about it and apply it really specifically to ourselves. So have fun with that.